The floorboards groaned beneath Karen Mitchell's designer loafers as she crept through the front entrance, gripping a shiny brass key that shimmered under the golden afternoon sun. She tugged her HOA president badge into view and raised her phone with practiced ease to document what she labeled unauthorized interior violations. The abstract canvas hanging over the fireplace would be her first strike. She was midway through capturing photos of non-compliant throw pillows when two uniformed officers stepped calmly into view from the hallway, their badges gleaming like her stolen key. Their hands hovered near their weapons, their faces locked in a blend of professional awareness and mild disbelief. Karen froze, lips twitching like a goldfish yanked from water. "My name is Marcus Chen. I moved into Oak Ridge Estates 3 months after my divorce was finalized. The place felt like suburban bliss. Trimmed lawns, whisper-quiet nights, the illusion of peace. Until I crossed paths with Karen Mitchell, the self-declared enforcer of HOA order. My first violation showed up within 48 hours of moving in. The issue? My living room curtains were visible from the sidewalk. Karen herself brought the warning, clipboard clutched in one hand, smile stiff and robotic. I assumed it was a joke, until she handed me an official letter stamped with HOA authority. That moment marked the beginning. The violations became relentless. My mailbox was deemed the wrong shade of black. My garden hose, coiled counterclockwise, an aesthetic infraction. Even my recycling bin failed inspection for being placed at an 87 degrees angle, not 90. Every notice came with a fine and an absurdly detailed citation referencing sections of a rule book she seemed to be inventing on the fly. I started keeping my blinds shut permanently, hoping to escape her ever-watching gaze. That earned me another warning. Creating a hostile frontage. Apparently, neutral curtains weren't enough to maintain neighborhood morale. Karen's desire to enter my home began subtly. In board meetings, she'd casually mention how model residents had invited her in for spontaneous inspections. When I politely declined her request, she looked genuinely insulted. Soon, she began showing up at random hours, claiming she'd received anonymous complaints about strange smells or concerning noises. I declined each time, citing privacy laws. But Karen didn't take rejection well. That's when it turned dark. I started noticing odd details. A flower pot slightly off-center. Footprints in freshly mulched beds that didn't match my shoes. The breaking point came when I returned from a weekend trip and found muddy prints inside my foyer. I filed a police report that same night, explaining months of unwanted targeting and the suspected break-in. Detective Janet Rodriguez listened intently as I laid out the paper trail of citations, threats, and Karen's intensifying obsession. Her advice: a sting operation, hidden cameras, a timed routine, a trap. Detective Rodriguez explained that, without solid proof, holding Karen accountable would be difficult. We installed hidden HD cameras throughout the house and created a clear plan. I'd maintain my regular routine, leave at the same time, follow my usual habits. Meanwhile, 2 officers would remain inside, out of sight. All we needed was for Karen to make her move. What we didn't realize was that Karen had already obtained a duplicate key from old HOA records, a forgotten copy left by the previous owner's contractor. She was already steps ahead, confident and reckless. The trap was scheduled for Thursday evening, a day I always walked my golden retriever, Bailey, at precisely 6:30 p.m. I leashed her up and exited the house like always, making sure any watching eyes could track my steps down the street. Inside, Officers Maria Gonzalez and James Thompson had entered an hour earlier through the back door and were stationed in my home office, eyes on the camera feeds via laptop. At exactly 6:47 p.m., they saw Karen approach the front door. She looked both ways, clearly trying to act discreet, but her nerves betrayed her. She pulled a key from her purse and unlocked my door like she lived there. Karen moved straight to the living room like a seasoned intruder. Phone already in hand, she began snapping photos, muttering complaints about non-compliant bookshelf titles and offensive furniture placements. She was so deep into her self-righteous rampage that she didn't notice Officer Gonzalez until she cleared her throat with purpose and asked, "Ma'am, why are you inside this residence?" Karen spun around in panic, phone flying from her grip and cracking as it hit the hardwood. She stumbled for words and finally blurted out that she was conducting an official HOA inspection, waving her badge like it held legal power. "Officer." Thompson calmly asked if she had written consent to enter. Karen's eyes flashed with fury. Her voice sharpened, claiming that as HOA president, she had implied authority to access any home for the good of the community. She even had the nerve to say the officers should be thanking her for protecting property values that paid their salaries through taxes. Her hand shook as she rummaged through her purse, pulling out a laminated copy of the HOA bylaws. She flipped pages wildly, her manicured nails tapping nervously. She began reading aloud with a quivering voice about community standards and compliance integrity. But Officer Gonzalez stopped her mid-lecture, reminding her that HOA rules were civil, not criminal, and breaking into someone's home without consent is a felony. Karen's confidence shattered. She turned toward the door, announcing she was leaving, but Officer Thompson stepped in her path without a word. "Am I being detained?" she barked. "Yes," both officers said in unison. Karen's polished exterior began to crack. Her voice trembled as she tried to justify her actions. She insisted there had been a miscommunication, that she possessed a key, and that her role as HOA president gave her full authority to inspect any home she felt was violating community expectations. Officer Gonzalez didn't flinch. She calmly informed Karen that her presence without permission constituted criminal trespassing, regardless of her title or imagined authority. Karen's hand reached shakily into her purse. She dialed her husband. On speaker, speaking with dramatic flair about being unlawfully detained and intimidated by power-tripping officers. Her husband's voice echoed, concerned at first, until the officers explained what she had done. Then came the silence, cold, heavy. When Gonzalez reached for her handcuffs, Karen's attitude flipped from righteous to desperate. She shrieked about her rights, demanded their supervisor, swore her brother-in-law was an attorney who would sue the department blind, and warned that she'd have the officers fired by sundown. But none of her bluster stopped the sharp click of steel cuffs locking around her wrists. The walk to the patrol car was cinematic. Neighbors emerged one by one like it was a block party. Karen, red-faced and rattled, tried to hide her face, but her platinum bob and monogrammed blazer gave her away instantly. Margaret Ellis, 2 doors down, clapped. Robert Chong filmed the scene in HD. Karen hissed at them, screeching about privacy rights, apparently unaware of the irony. At the precinct, her meltdown continued. She refused to be fingerprinted, whining that ink would ruin her manicure. She demanded a private holding cell, arguing that someone of her stature couldn't be held with common criminals. The booking officer, unimpressed and unbothered, processed her like any other suspect. When given her one phone call, Karen didn't ring a lawyer. She tried to call the mayor's office, demanding to speak to someone about her political persecution. The duty sergeant, later in disbelief, told me she had never witnessed someone so completely detached from the consequences of their own actions. By morning, the news of Karen Mitchell's arrest had spread like wildfire across Oak Ridge Estates, faster than any HOA memo. An emergency board meeting was scheduled that weekend, and the turnout was overwhelming. Standing room only. Former neighbors who'd suffered under Karen's petty dictatorship came forward, one after another, sharing their own stories, harassment, citations, even strange late-night visits. The vote to remove her was unanimous, including former allies, who now scrambled to distance themselves. The board immediately amended the key policy, requiring all HOA spare keys to be destroyed or returned. That alone drew a round of applause from the crowd. During the criminal proceedings, disturbing new revelations surfaced. The prosecutor revealed that Karen had used old spare keys from HOA files to enter at least 3 other homes, quietly building personal dossiers on residents she deemed problems. Her files included interior photographs, annotated violations, real or imagined, and personal details like schedules and lifestyle habits. Her defense attorney, clearly in damage control mode, negotiated a plea deal to avoid a high-profile trial. But the damage to her reputation was irreversible. Karen Mitchell, once the unshakable queen of Oak Ridge Estates, was sentenced to 2 years probation, 300 hours of community service, and a $10,000 fine. She stood motionless in court as the judge handed down the sentence, eyes wide in disbelief that her so-called HOA authority hadn't shielded her from real-world law. The judge made it clear, community rules don't override the Constitution, and self-given titles don't grant the power to trespass, surveil, or intimidate. But the courtroom revelations didn't stop there. Investigators had pulled files from her home computer. Dozens of folders labeled with residents' names, containing photos of bedrooms, living rooms, and even children's spaces. She had a ranking system assigning residents threat levels based on their willingness to comply. My folder was tagged with a red flag, including notes about my divorce, my work hours, and speculation about my income based on my furniture and car. Detective Rodriguez testified that Karen's actions went far beyond HOA scope. They were closer to criminal stalking and data collection with malicious intent. It was surveillance masquerading as community upkeep. Against her lawyer's urgent advice, Karen took the stand to explain her side. What followed was a stunning monologue. She claimed her work preserved property value, insisted residents welcomed her oversight, and boldly stated that people like me were diluting the character of the neighborhood. When asked directly if she believed she had the right to enter any home under her jurisdiction, she answered yes, without hesitation. Gasps filled the courtroom. Karen even compared her HOA badge to a police warrant, claiming her role was like being the chief enforcer of neighborhood order. The judge leaned forward, jaw clenched, and that was it. That single moment sealed her fate. Karen Mitchell, who once roamed Oak Ridge Estates like a one-woman regime, became a national example of power gone unchecked. Her downfall was poetic justice, delivered not by angry residents, but by her own arrogance, captured on hidden cameras and sealed with a pair of handcuffs, and me. I finally got my peace, and left my curtains wide open.